Well, hello! Welcome back to Scribbles and Ink Stains. My name is Mary, and this bright little spread in my Traveler's Notebook Vertical Weekly is a preview of April's currently inked fountain pens. I want to start with the swatches because this month, in fact, for all 4 months so far in 2023, my starting point has always been interesting to me ink samples. And that makes me curious how you select your monthly pen ink situation. I'll flash chapters and timestamps here on the screen if you are here to see a specific pen ink combination. But let's just talk about March. I have a little bit of a disclaimer. Beware the Ides of March, you might have heard, that phrase has always rung true for me. March seems to be that ominous season when spring routs winter and we're tossed around by the violent resurrection of nature. I hope you've survived the storms. One of my camera cards did not, so you didn't hear from me in March. I'll film a separate short overview of last month's currently inked swatches. I did load up, 13 pens. These are the swatch samples. I've already gone through and rated them, and I will be filming a short sort of look at that bit of history just to keep continuity on my channel. But I thought the better place to start, since we're already on Easter Sunday, would be with April currently inked. All of the swatches this month are samples or bottles of inks that I'm really excited about. Some are new to my stash, some are just examples of me challenging myself to use some of the inks that came in late 2022. So it's sort of a blend, and yeah, let's talk about it. Just a quick word about the swatch card situation. At the end of March, I ran out of my coloring, sampling, swatching cards, and I've been sort of looking at doing my own little DIY swatching cards. I'm not going to redo the size. Simone has a really good video where she talks about a hybrid system that she came up with, and this is partly inspired by that, partly inspired, at least with the way I'm labeling them, Maria Rousseau. I love the idea of using some of my calligraphy nibs to just kind of add some whimsy to my swatch cards. I do really like what Chris Sains and Marilyn Darling do with their swatch cards with the little water droplets and water tests, but frankly, the hybrid that I landed on sort of works best for me. The thing I'm really interested in is looking at the more painterly qualities of fountain pen inks, so this kind of layering system really works for me. Simone is the one I believe I first saw run a band along the edge, thinking that I would also file them horizontally, something like this. But in my stash, and for many, many years, I have this little box that my husband made. He likes to do woodworking. Yeah, so like he planed this wood down from boards and created a box. And these swatch cards fit perfectly vertically. If this represents 1 year of swatching, then obviously I can get probably 5 years of swatch cards in this little system. So I am making these myself. I'm using just watercolor paper from your nearest favorite big box hobby store. It's a Canson watercolor sketchbook, 7x10. Size of the book doesn't really matter. I believe I only get 3x2, 6 cards out of a sheet. So I might think about that sizing a little differently, but basically all I'm doing, taking a quilting block and just measuring out my swatch cards 2x4. Cut them out, use a little corner trimmer to trim the corners, and then I'm left with a pretty heavy-duty swatch card. I feel like it's a little bit heavier duty than the original colorings, and yeah, that's what I've decided to do with that. I will probably do the lettering in the vertical orientation, just because that's how I'm going to store the cards. Here's an example when I thought I was going to set them up horizontally. So let's look at what some of the options were for inks that I fell in love with during March that I have not yet inked. I have kind of pulled together some ideas based on some new to me ink samples. But I feel like I want to pare this down. I wanted to try some new to me samples of the Iroshizuku inks. I am really into greens and little dog hair. Greens and neutrals for drawing. I feel like to control the number of fountain pens that I'm cleaning at the end of the month, instead of loading an indelible ink in a vacuum pen, which is a huge win. This Platinum Carbon Black in my TWSBI VAC 700 is a holy grail for urban sketching, for doodling, for drawing, for anything where you want to combine pen and ink. And I feel like I can show you very quickly some of that here. With my week setups, I was able to basically layer wash and ink. These washes happened over the top of the lettering. So that was a win. I really enjoyed sort of that washy situation with my inks. This ink in a vacuum pen means it stayed fresh and flowy and beautiful and lush for the entire month. That was really instructive. But I need a break from cleaning pens, I say, one day after that massive bath time. So I feel like this month I'm just going to use other indelible inks instead of loading up a fountain pen. Okay, and this still feels like too much. Obviously, I'm really into these kind of neutrals. I have a new to me Colorverse that I'm really eager to try. I have a super interesting sample of 3 Oysters Dancheong. This is a kind of, I would call it a cross between a tan, a red, and a brown in a very pale, low contrast situation that nonetheless I feel will be legible. So that I feel like I want to put in a pen. Cool Gray is the one that I'm carrying over. Here's some examples of that. It's a 3 Oysters ink that shades beautifully. But this is a spread in my Hobonichi cousin on Tomoe River paper where I was working with that nib. I did start in my journaling, whether it's in my cousin or in my longer form journaling, I did start to label each of the pages with the pen and the ink that I'm using, and I've been fairly consistent with that throughout. Carrying that over, there was just too much to flush down the sink, and I loved the combination. This is a TWSBI Eco Cerulean with a medium nib. This Workshop Wonders is one of the newer releases from Ferris Wheel Press. I did want to challenge myself to use some inks from my Diamine Inkvent. However, I don't think I'll use 2. I think I will not do the red. That's okay, I still have my kind of magenta Jingle Berry from the Diamine Inkvent. I know I want to use my Troublemaker Hanging Rice. I did love this so much that I picked up a bottle, but I'm still working with the last of my sample. Platinum Edelstein is a sample that's been in my stash from an early Goulet order. For quite some time, I've never loaded it in a pen. I've got about 2 mil, which is the limit of the Goulet size. Decision time, is this too much? We'll make the final decision about the Shin Ryoku as I'm picking pens. Let's do that. Let's look at pens. In this case is the rest of my stash that was not inked in March. There is one that I was able to resurrect. This is my first kind of real fountain pen purchase other than the Platinum Preppies. I had dropped it and bent the nib, and I was so green and new in the hobby, this is easily over 10 years ago, that I ended up losing or throwing away in a fit of cleaning my studio the feed and nib unit, not realizing that you could just replace the nib itself. So yeah, bonehead move, but I was able to replace that nib and feed unit. The Safari nib and feed unit is in stock at Van Ness. If you ever misplace yours, that's readily available, and the Safari unit fits the All Star. So maybe I'll do that. Since it's been out of commission for some time, I'm also kind of trying to make a decision about some of my nibs. I'm much happier across the board with my TWSBI nibs than with my Lamy nibs, not including the Lamy 2000, which I'm going to pull out because I know I want to ink this. I feel like it's time to ink up my Sailor pen of the year from last year. This is a Pro Gear Slim, and I love it. It is a medium fine nib, so maybe that would be a good match. I want to re-ink my Vanishing Point, and I was thinking of one of these Iroshizukus. And honestly, I might bring that green back into the picture and do that. I'm not necessarily matching colors, so I feel like that might be a good match. A medium nib, that might be a good match. That might be a good match. Okay, this is a shimmer, so that makes that decision easier. I need a TWSBI medium or broad for that. All right, and oh, there's a surprise for one of them. There's a surprise for that one. Expecting in the mail today, so I'm going to put that on pause, and I will put that in my brass. Okay, so I can ink everything else up except for this little surprise right here. All right, let's ink these puppies. So currently inked April. I selected these colors to sort of echo what I'm seeing in the landscape this month on my long locks. This would be really fun in a medium nib because of that red sheen. Still a little bit scratchy. Still trying to decide about this nib. I've currently have on order a medium replacement nib. All right, I'm going to move from fine to broad in terms of the nib size with a special slot reserved at the end for something I'm about to unbox under a separate video. This is my Sailor Pro Gear Slim, which I adore, with a medium fine nib. I feel like the Lamy 2000 extra fine will be next in line. One of my all-time favorite pens. Lovely shading. This is probably pushing my boundary as far as legibility, though. Just flows out of that nib beautifully, though. Next one up is a kind of a muddier green with a fine nib that I've adjusted to make wetter, and it's a fire hose now. And this is the Kingdom series Colorverse, kind of that poopy ochre color that I love. Right, it's almost like a muddy brown or black, but washed out. Look how lovely that will be in drawings. This is the one pen I carried over from March. 3 Oysters. A brand I have utterly fallen in love with. They are beautiful shaders. Okay, this will be interesting. Another 3 Oysters in a recently resurrected pen. Almost like White Rabbit, which I recently saw Maria swatch on 30 Days, 30 Inks. I probably would have been fine just letting this pen die, but at least now I can sell it if I really decide that it's not for me. My narwhal will be next, loaded with Diamine Inkvent ink. Last but not least. Alright, so that is all you get until I do that unboxing. Feels like a good selection. The iffy ones are going to be that Lamy Al Star. I'm just not feeling the nib. And perhaps this might be a little faint for me, but at least it will write beautifully. I don't think I've ever had such a bright palette. Let me know what you're working with this month in April. That little tease on the bottom will be revealed at some point this week. Can't make any promises. Sooner rather than later, I'm going for a new system of shorter, more frequent videos, and because that's the kind of thing that I enjoy. I really miss you all when you take 2 or 3 weeks to post a video, so yeah, I kind of have to hold myself to the same standard. Anyway, thanks if you made it this far. If you enjoyed yourself, consider hitting like and subscribe. It helps the algorithm, and I will see you in my next video. See you soon. Bye.